Namaste viewers, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching us from. My name is Manish Solanki and we are presenting Hinduism Live Q&A session with Hindu Academy team today. We have Vijay Bhai here, Nisit Bhai here and Sita Ben live with us today. And please send us your Q&A on the Hinduism. Today's special topic is atheism and Hinduism. So as usual, we'll start our video on the special topic, and then we'll have questions around it. And later on, we'll open up for the general Q&A session. So I'll share the video in a minute.
Does it want to be religious? Does it make any difference to be if the person is very humankind?
You see, I teach Hinduism in, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of schools in England. I've taught to maybe 500 schools in UK. And I do surveys in the UK. I survey. I ask them, especially the 16 to 18 age group, when you are dealing with 11-year-old children, you ask them, do you believe in religion? They'll go, yes, 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 yes. They all go, very enthusiastic. I'm Christian, I'm Hindu, I'm Jain, whatever. They'll go, yes, 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 11. The same youngster, when he's 16, because I've been with them for 20 years, so I know how they grow up. When they're 16, you say, do you believe in religion? This is real, I'm telling you this true story. At, say, Sutton Grammar School, 90% of the youngsters, 90% said we are atheist. Gujarati, Sanskrit, Nastik. You don't believe in God, fellow. This guy comes with news, he's a nuisance. 90% top schools in UK, the youngsters do not believe in God. Does it mean as if they're sinful and they're all going to hell? The Hindus say no. In fact, we feel they are freed from this religious brainwashing. Thank God. Really, I'm telling you. Because it's really in a way brainwashed, because the parents really don't know what religion, they're pushing it, saying we have to do it, thapat maris, we have to do it. So they are just pressurized into it, and they've never really thought. But now the modern thinking youngsters, that's why at the age of 16, they are out of the cat is out of the bag. They're not going to subscribe to religion anymore. They say, we agree, yeah, we are Hindu because that's our tradition. We are born as a Hindu, and my parents are Hindu. That's why we take a name, Hindu. But we don't agree with it. We are Nastik, Bada Nastik. So what is going on here? What is the solution? Are they all going to hell? What's happening? The world has lost religion, and are we lost? No, to the contrary. This shows evolution of humanity. We are no longer satisfied with the traditional way we were relating to the idea of the spirit, using religious ploy or using gods and goddesses. The modern thinking youngsters feel this idea of a God in the heaven does not fit with their common sense, does not agree with their common sense. That's why people become atheists, like Richard Dawkins. He says, how can I believe in a God and see all this suffering? And say, what kind of a God created this? This must be a monster. So they become atheists. And he said, the Hindus say, no, that's terrible, you're a horrible man. No, you're clever. You're really seen through. The idea of God is a ploy, and it fails when you challenge him rationally. It fails. When it comes to the issue of suffering, concept of a super personality called God, who is all powerful, all knowing, and all compassionate, falls to pieces. It cannot be so. If that is, this God is a horrible monster. This is tremendous suffering, not in the human kingdom, in the living kingdom. They're all biting and killing each other. What God created this? This horrible God. So God fails at the rational level. Fails. And so be it. As Hindus, I tell many times, I say, you can be an atheist Hindu. I say, you can be atheist Hindu. I say, look at me. The idea of a theos comes with a lot of unanswered questions, baggage. It's very difficult to swallow. I tried, but it's very difficult. So the best way is to, rather than focus on a God in heaven, let us focus on what is, as you said quite rightly, what is humanity? Let's focus on this thing in front of our eyes. What is the essential nature of these human beings or the living things? What is underpinning them? What is their speciality? Let us become more, if you like, let us be more endearing toward other human beings. Let us have more affinity for other human beings. So modern youth are giving up the idea of God in the heaven. They rather become good human being and relate to other human beings to solve the issue of their own lifestyle. That's all. And is that wrong? No. This is, if you like, the spirituality suited for this age. So idea of focusing on temples and churches and whatever and gods and goddesses is no longer palatable, no longer digestible by the modern thinking youth. It's no longer, it's gone. Those days are gone. So they're looking for some other ways. Does it mean they're lost? No. They're not prepared to go along with the ancient way of searching for spirituality. They're looking for newer ways for searching for spirituality. And sometimes they get it seriously wrong. You know how do they get it seriously wrong? They try those little pills. You know, they give, I get special experience. I get psychedelic experience. See, they do get caught up with all this weird stuff, but they're exploring the human condition and trying to make sense of it. And the best way they think they are comfortable with. And if, look, this is not new. Again, I love to mention Vivekananda. Vivekananda said this very beautiful. This was done 100 years ago, before all these modern things started. He said, in the ancient times, you'll be called an atheist if you don't believe in a God. In this day and age, you'll be called an atheist if you don't believe in yourself. See, just transfer the emphasis, not on a God in heaven, in yourself. You are something. Do you believe in yourself? When I talk to an atheist, do you believe in yourself? He said, yeah, of course do you think, Mr. Lakan? Of course I believe in myself. Do you think there's something special about you? Yes, I knew it, he said. That is what it is now. So searching for a resolution of the human condition, not with a God in the heaven, but in humanity, or within ourselves, or with other human beings. This is the way forward. This is the evolved phase of spirituality suited to the modern age. You can be an atheist, means non-theistic Hindu. I'm a non-theistic Hindu. For me, the idea of a God in heaven is tiresome. When I go to primary schools and children ask, Mr. Lakani, which God do you believe in? That's why I say Ganesh or Hanuman. I say, the God I believe in is looking at me through those eyes now. He's I didn't know there's a God in me. See, bringing the emphasis not in a God in heaven, but God in humanity.
So there you have a very interesting topic, Hinduism and atheism. Where do we stand and where is humanity going with rise in atheism, as Jaybai was mentioning? We welcome Sita Ben and Vijay. So first of all, basic questions, Sita Ben, Vijay. What is atheism, Sita Ben?
Yes, so atheism is the belief in no God, basically. I don't believe in God. So theos means God, so atheism means no God. And as Dad was saying very clearly in the video, it's a pathway that's appealing to more and more people who have even been born into all sorts of religions from around the world are finding the idea of God not very appealing because, as Dad said, there are so many unanswered philosophical questions with a personality called God. So the issue is that, how do you address this? Because it makes you think that there's actually nothing worth believing in. There's nothing higher to believe in. Why don't we just be good human beings here and now? And that's the end of the story. And that's appealing to more and more people. And this whole idea of Richard Dawkins and his kind of books and his theories are very popular because, it gets rid of that idea of thinking of God and having to brainwash yourself and believe in a God. And I think because in previous generations, our grandparents and great-grandparents, this idea was sort of drummed into us that actually, we have to believe in this because this is something that's part of my tradition and I have to do it without really questioning it. But now, as Dad said, the cat is out of the bag and we now have the freedom and ability to think for ourselves. And when we think for ourselves, we think, hang on, there seems to be a big discrepancy here. So this idea of atheism is gaining popularity. But the wonderful thing about Hinduism is that it doesn't make you any less Hindu if you are an atheist, which many people may be surprised to hear, because when you think Hinduism, the first thing you think of is all the 330 million gods that we have. And you think, how can Hinduism allow for atheism? But yes, it is actually allowed within fold. So there's a lot that we can actually discuss around this topic. Vijay, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with Sita. Atheism basically the disbelief in the idea of a God or gods in the heavens. I mean, it does not go into that detail. I don't think that idea of spirituality or whatever. But the main idea is a disbelief in the idea of a God or gods somewhere out there looking after us or creating us. That's the main thing. And if you ask an atheist, he just said, look, where's the proof? And on the contrary, there's a lot of proof out there which shows that actually if there's a God out there, he's not worth believing in. Because quite often you see religion say that, oh, if you don't believe in me, if you don't accept my message, you don't go to heaven. It almost sounds like, he's a need. He can't live without a need of people worshiping him. So he demands in all these religions that you worship me, otherwise you're doomed. And that is just something that atheists could look at this God fellow. I mean, look, he's such a need for us. What kind of a God he is? Also the fact that, as Sita mentioned, there's so much suffering out there. And on the contrary, so you may say there's a God out there, but the evidence you see in front of you actually kind of proves that there's no God sitting on a throne in heaven. So what do you do? I mean, this is not a question that, which is a modern question. It's very ancient. As a matter of fact, I think, as Manish Sita will tell you, some of the earliest philosophers of Hinduism were actually atheistic in nature. And the key mission was to understand the human condition. So they made attempts to divide, categorize human experiences. And they went to all these ideas. And they never actually brought God in, because the ideas use all the human condition. As Jaibai mentions, continues all the time. The key idea of Sanatana Dharma is to resolve the human condition, not bring a God in there who kind of does everything for you, controls you. So in many ways, it's a very ancient question. And even to this day, atheism have got a very valid point. I have read the books by Dawkins, and you go, yeah, it makes sense. But of course, they stop at that point only idea of that. They don't talk of anything beyond metaphysical. But his book, like the one book which is, if you get a chance to read, is really good, is The Greatest Show on Earth. It's on the idea of evolution. It's fantastic. It really explains to you how things evolve. And then you have, Stephen Hawking, E equals to MC squared. And they explain some profound, ideas without bringing a God in. So they've got some really, really powerful messages. And we should kind of look at those as well. But as I mentioned, the idea of searching for what is out there, whether it's physical or metaphysical, that is the goal of humans. Try and find out for yourself. And that is what we should aim for. In that sense, the atheism has got a point. That's all I can add to this at the moment, Manish.
Thank you, Vijay Bhai, Sita Ben. The next question is, there is something called agnostics. So what is agnostic, and what is the difference between atheism and agnosticism? Vijay Bhai?
I think that the difference is the agnostics are kind of saying, look, we can't prove either way. God exists, doesn't exist. We're not really sure. So let's just say that we do not know and leave it there. Unless God proves himself in front of us, okay, accept it. But they're not saying either way, because they believe there's evidence both ways. The evidence should actually God does exist. If you look at the world is so beautiful, intricate, all this beautiful diversity of life. There's also the idea of consciousness. There's something more to us. Why are we self-aware? Descartes says, I think therefore I am, something like that. So why are we self-aware if it's just a lump of matter? So agnostics said, look, we're not sure, let's sit on the fence. But the atheists are very clear. Atheists said, look, we can see there's suffering, there's evil in this world. There's all these things happening, right? And yet we see all the profound, changes made in the world. Big scientists are mainly atheists. They go, look, there's no God, let's face it, yeah? If there's a God, he would not do all this stuff. The atheists, agnostics are saying, look, we can never be. Maybe the reason why suffering is happening, we do not know. So let's leave it there. And so we don't know if God exists. Basically, they're kind of fence sitters.
Yeah, I think very interestingly, Hinduism actually promotes the idea of everyone being a humble agnostic, as in we are never actually sure if there is a God or there isn't God unless we come face to face with it ourselves. Because all the Indic traditions, they don't just focus on belief and a belief system. It's all about being and becoming enlightened for ourselves. So how can we actually know that there is something beyond this physical world unless we actually experience it for ourselves? So that's why Hinduism actually encourages us to take the stance of being a humble agnostic. Don't be sort of bombastic about it, there is no God, or also to say there is definitely a God and be brainwashed about it. So it says actually you're probably better off taking the middle ground and saying, I'm not sure. It's possible that there is a God out there. And we go on the sort of experiences of all the various saints and prophets from the past, recent past, as well as ancient times as well, who have talked about there's something deeper to the whole universe. And as Dad has said many times, you know, sometimes we get sort of caught up in a personality, a spiritual personality, which is okay to an extent, but it's almost like they're showing you go this way to make spiritual progress. And if you just hang on to the sign and say, I'm making spiritual progress, you're actually not making spiritual progress. So Hinduism says, don't get caught up on a personality or a book which tells you about spiritual progress. Go on the journey that you are being encouraged to go on and get there yourself. And really the only proof of the pudding is in the eating. So when you get there, you can say, actually, I am enlightened. I know that there is something very magical and special underneath this very crass physical material world. So yes, it's probably best to take on that stance of being a humble agnostic until we actually reach that destination for ourselves.
That's very wonderful to hear, Sita-Ben. It's almost like, Gautam Buddha's story there, where he was enlightened and then he was talking to people, and the Buddhism, in a way, comes very close to atheism. So, Vijay Bhai, how is Buddhism, and what is Buddha's view and Buddha's point here? And if he experienced something, spirituality, many Buddhists believe Buddhism is like atheism. There is no God or no soul as well. What is your point of view on Buddha, and what is Buddhism talking about?
So Buddhism is in many ways very unique. The beliefs are very unique. I mean, as you say, that Buddhism is very special because, unlike, as I always mention, sometimes that India is unique because they have all the 4 belief systems. The belief system one, which says that there's only matter, which is like, atheists believe there is no soul or there is no spirit. And that is like our Charvaks in India, the ancient Charvak system. And then there are others, who said that there is only spirit. Ultimately, there's no matter, like Adi Shankara. Ultimately, there is only spirit. Then you have in the middle who said that actually there's spirit and there's matter. And then you have this Buddhist here special who said there is no spirit and there is no matter, ultimately. They believe that everything is temporary. There's no permanence in this world. And if you ask them, they say, look, if I ask you, are you the same person you were last week? Of course we are not. We have changed now because we learn new things, right? So everything is continuously evolving. The day that everything ceases to exist in terms of matter and spirit, that cessation of activities is known as nirvana. And that is the idea of enlightenment. So it's very strange when you ask me, nirvana is the saying like, you have success, every activity success is stopped, and then you find out, you align, okay, you feel I'm actually beyond all this stuff. That's what the idea of Buddha. That's why sometimes they call Buddha Tathagat. Tathagat can mean thus gone or thus appeared. It's quite interesting because Buddhists also say that there is no difference between nothingness and somethingness. They don't see the difference actually. And they also explain, in a way they're right, because when there was no Big Bang, there was nothing. Now you got Big Bang, there's something. So if they're the same thing, then what's the difference? It's very arbitrary, the difference, right? So they are very strange like that. But although they don't believe in the idea of a God as such, they do believe that there is a goal. Human life has got a goal, which is the idea of nirvana, to stop get out of this trap of existence, the idea of rebirth. So they still believe in that idea that there is rebirth. And you're right, Buddha said, don't even bring a God in there, because what's the point of a God? Don't think of somebody in heaven helping you. It doesn't make sense. There's a very famous story, I think, which Jai Bhai said many times, is that Buddha was meditating, and then somebody asked him, is there a God? Is there a God? He would come every day in his sermons when the Sangha was sitting. And he goes, then Buddha said, okay, now come to me in the evening. So when he came, he goes, is there a God? The Buddha said very clearly, look, if somebody shoots an arrow to you, and you get an arrow, do you start working out what's the trajectory, what kind of arrow it is, what is the bullet for? No, you take the arrow out, right? That's the aim. So I think the Buddha, that's what they said, the 4 noble truths they have, right? That there is suffering, there's a cause of the suffering, there's a solution of the suffering, and the solution is the 8-fold path of the Buddha, which is, whatever, right? So the whole idea is to alleviate suffering, very noble goal. So forget the God, let's remove suffering from humanity. So they have this idea, but again, the idea is very, very interesting. It's the idea of question of nothingness, where sunyata basically, where everything disappears. because there's no permanent thing like that. Yes, and they actually, that's why the Western people love it a lot, because even the universe, it decays, it goes. So everything is moving. There's nothing that is fixed. That's the idea of Buddhism. So it's very, very unique like that. So if you explain to somebody, it's like, a current flowing through the wire here in my house. The point the current stops and light goes, that is like nirvana. So nirvana is not moksha. It's different, right? We have to keep that in mind. I know we interchangeably use it. Nirvana means the idea of, it's a negation in that sense, right? But yeah, it's very strange. So Buddhas are atheists in that sense, but they're very unique atheists, I think. But anyway, Sita, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really wonderful. I love that story about, you don't analyze where the trajectory of the arrow is when you kind of, you want to just get rid of it. You want to get it out of your system. And that's essentially the practical nature of Buddhism, is that it doesn't sort of try and, look up at a God in the sky and try and, think all these things. It says, look, all of us are going to go through old age, disease, and death. It's inevitable for all of us. What can we do to resolve our human condition? So in that sense, it's incredibly practical, and that's probably why it's so appealing to so many people. And I think the way that it's sort of moved across the whole of Southeast Asia, and now it's very much becoming popular in the West, is because it doesn't have this baggage of a God as a person who is, either very cruel or not very powerful, because the way the world is, it just doesn't explain an all-powerful, all-compassionate, all-loving God.
That's wonderful to hear, Vijay Bhai, Sita Ben. So we take the next question, which is, what is the advantage of atheism? And is there any advantage? And, it's proven, I think, medically, that if you believe in some God or something, it helps you heal faster in hospitals and stuff. And with atheism, the drawback is that you have no one to fall back on. If you are in serious trouble, or, if you don't know where to go, you are on your own. And where do you get the support from? So what are the advantages and disadvantages of atheism, Sita?
So I think the wonderful thing is, because Dad mentioned in the video, he's, for the last 30, 40 years, he's been going around to so many schools, and the vast majority of the older sort of age group say they're atheist, because, they've really had a chance to think about this idea of God, and it just doesn't appeal to them. But I think there's a real sort of wave coming, in the sense that the scientific revolution, which has been happening over recent years and is really gathering momentum and pace, is something that's so much more appealing to the youth of today. And, it's kind of getting further and further along on its journey, to the point where science is hopefully going to reach the conclusion that there is a great unity behind all of this apparent diversity. So chemistry will reach its conclusion when it finds the one element to which all elements are made, and physics will reach its conclusion when we discover the one energy from which all energies are manifested. So in that sense, hopefully we can find the same answer that all of this ancient metaphysical philosophy has been talking about, the Vedas, is then expressed in a much more sort of dynamic way through the language of science. And in a way, you can say that if you believe the path of science, if you call it that, you actually come to the same conclusion without the tops and tails of a religion, without the tops and tails of a God. And Hinduism is incredibly magnanimous. It doesn't say, oh, you must do it only through the Hindu pathway because you are born as a Hindu. If you find that sort of unity behind the diversity through the path of science, then good for you. And that's probably much more appealing to the world today. And the other point that Manish Bhai, you said was really interesting, is this idea of who do you fall back on? And again, Dad said in the video, if you have to believe in yourself, essentially. You're no longer relying on an external deity to give you the strength. Actually, you're relying on your own inner strength. So this idea of being able to recover and heal yourself is because you're not believing or relying on somebody outside. It's actually more empowering to say, I rely on my own inner strength, my own inner will to overcome any sort of illness or physical difficulties. So in a way, it's wonderful that humanity has progressed so far. And the same thing that was talked about in the Vedas is now sort of coming to a head with the modern sort of developments of science. Vijay bhai?
Yeah, so I think Manish bhai is a very interesting question. I mean, what are the benefits of atheism? I think the thing is, I did go once with Jay Bhai to an interfaith talk, and when Jay Bhai challenged, one of the atheists that, do you believe there's something more than just, because I believe that, yes, I believe in the idea of consciousness, whatever. They don't believe in a God. So in a way, he actually believes in the idea of principle based, right? But I think there's some atheists who say, look, no, we have no evidence at all, so they don't bother to explore that. But Sita mentions that I think hopefully in the coming days, science will try and explore the idea of consciousness, self-awareness, and what is the root of all that. And I hope that will take things further. But even the atheists do have some sort of idea that there's more to us than just this matter. Because many of them are thinking rationally, right? So they won't just say this is it. They'll say, so I think in that sense, I say Hinduism, I guess, will eventually merge with the idea of the consciousness or something around those lines. So hopefully that will happen as well. So, but the idea of belief, I know I've read some studies as well, Manish, people who believe tend to heal faster because there's some sort of because change of bodily chemicals of hormones or whatever. But then as Vivekananda says, believe in yourself. Because we're not taught that, we tend to stick to a God. But if you're taught from a young age, I'm pretty sure you can still do well, recover if you believe in yourself. You're taught from an early age, I believe in myself. And I'm pretty sure you'll work. It's just a question of how your mind works, right? And how you generate positive vibes in your body, which has the right positive, hormones, and you heal. So yeah, mixture of biology and beliefs here. So yeah, Manish bhai, there you go.
That's wonderful to hear, Sita Ben Vijay bhai, especially the stuff about relying on ourselves and finding inner strength to deal with anything, puts us in charge of our destiny. And that empowers as well as, puts us in charge of our destiny. Next question is, it is seen throughout the world that Buddhism and atheism both are on the rise. As Jay Bhai was mentioning, the 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds take their name as atheists. But, people throughout their lives, in a way, change. Their thoughts change as they go through their life experiences. So somebody at 16 or 18-year-old age, I was thinking I'm agnostic. I don't know whether there is God or not. It can't be proven. I was in similar seat, and then life experience has taught me that there seems to be something there. So are people always changing their views and moving from one position to the other? Or is the world as large moving towards atheism? What is your view, Vijay bhai?
Okay, Manish bhai, it's true. We all do that. We all change our views. That's how life is. As you learn more things, more experiences, we change our views. And that's actually a good thing. If you don't change your views and you're stuck in the rut, then there's something wrong. You should actually be changing your views as your life experiences kind of happen. I'll give you an honest opinion. I mean, my children are currently, I would say, kind of atheists in their views. I mean, they've been taught Hindus, they've got really all passed with A stars, but they're still thinking like that because they're experiencing and learning things in their life. And there's nothing wrong with that. As you move across and you experience, then you get more. I mean, it's my own example. When I was in university, I was thinking that actually there's no God. But I was an atheist. I always thought that why am I as a lump of carbon, self-aware? I mean, because I read Vivekananda's works, I guess maybe that's why I think like that. So I always ask this question that as a lump of matter, why am I self-aware? So I needed something out there. But I wasn't willing to accept just obvious as a God out there doing all this. That I wasn't willing to accept even that age. So I think that the path of exploration is a good path. Or rather fail and succeed to find those answers than believe something which is not rational. And it's okay to live your whole life and still struggle. Hinduism, I mean, you go through many births to find those answers. But the key thing is don't fall in this trap of believing something blindly because some prophet said so, or some god said so, or some guru or some book said so. That is not Hinduism. As a matter of fact, I've talked to some Dvait, acharyas. When I challenge them really hard, then is it okay if I just believe in a scripture, will I get moksha? Even they say no, actually it's not possible. You have to experience, because I mean, in the Mundaka Upanishad is a very famous verse, which Jay Bhai said it so many times, you all know, Naya Matma Pravachan Labhyo Na Medaya Na Bahuna Shrutena. So you will not get, moksha through scriptures, through sermons, through intellect as well. You will not get it, right? No meta will not work. Ultimately, you have to experience, as Sita mentioned at the very start. If you don't experience, but it's okay to be in that situation. That's what I would suggest. Don't feel bad if you're stuck in that unknown situation, agnostic situation. That's a good place to be, as a matter of fact. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's no point being brainwashed and accepting the Vedas just because you're a Hindu and you have to believe everything that's written there. We're incredibly open. We say, think about it for yourselves, because if you don't, then how are you going to progress on your journey? You're just being brainwashed and you're soaking everything up like a sponge and you're not really getting anywhere. You have to think about it for yourself and find a pathway which suits you and your temperament. And the thing is, it's something that you have to do yourself. It's not something that anybody else can do for you, no matter how sort of amazing your guru is or how amazing your scripture is. It's something that you need to progress on for yourself. And the beautiful thing is, because everyone's temperament is different, everyone's journey is unique. And as Manish Bhai said, it's a journey and you kind of have to go through all kinds of different routes and turn right, turn left, go long way, shortcuts, all of that. We have to go through that ourselves in order to reach that destination. And as we've said before, the greater progress you make, the greater affinity you start to feel with those around you. Even if their beliefs sound completely different to yours, you start feeling that natural affinity with everybody around you, whether they are theists, whether they are of this religion or that religion, if they have no idea about God, but they're incredibly spiritual, you start feeling that greater affinity, which you can't really put into words, because you're finding that sort of metaphysical connection with everyone around you.
That's wonderful to hear, that metaphysical connection and feeling everyone is your own, thinking about Sardamani's word there. So yes, wonderful to hear. We take the next question. That is, a theist will say a religion or belief in a personal God help you with your moral compass to decide what is right or wrong. But atheism, how do you decide? How do you judge what you should do in a particular situation? What is your guidance point, Sita-Ben?
It's yourself. That's why it's so incredibly empowering, is that we all do have that inner compass within ourselves, and we are sort of, in a way, sort of encouraged to do the right thing. We are taught by society, you must do the right thing, you must put others' needs before your own, and it's all lovely words to say, but ultimately it has to come from within you. And sometimes as humanity, we kind of go the wrong way. And then when we go the wrong way, there's something within us that says, hang on, something doesn't feel right. And eventually it might take a day, it might take a year, it might take a whole lifetime. You might be going the wrong way your whole life. But then eventually something will stir within you to say, hang on, I need to sort of come back to, something which makes me feel more connected with the living kingdom, with everything and everyone around me. And, you find that, when you do make those steps, you feel so much more at peace with yourself. So it's one of those things that moral compass is within you. And for some people, it makes more sense for them to project that sort of moral compass out there onto a personality called God. But ultimately, we have to remember that we are God ourselves, and that moral compass is within us. We are God. We are the spark of the divine on earth. So what better moral compass than what's already inside you? Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, I think Manish, actually I've heard that when I've been sometimes in interfaith dialogues, you hear some Abrahamic faith saying that, yeah, there would be no morality if there was no God. I mean, that doesn't make sense at all. I think what Sita said is far more sensible, because you yourself have got a compass in there. I mean, because ultimately we're all divine beings, right? So we will see others, we will feel their pain, we will see suffering. We make a judgment that we should not actually harm anything else, because it is linked to us in that sense. We feel their pain. So it's naturally within us. We don't really have to rely on a God to tell us. As a matter of fact, somebody would say that actually believing in a God giving us moral might be a bad idea, because if you're stuck in a rut saying this is morality, which is so old, it doesn't change. So the evolving idea of morality changes. I mean, in this day and age, I would say that if somebody says the atheist is less moral, that's just nonsense. It's not right. Because atheists sometimes are more moral than, fanatic religious people who are going on killing people, right? So there's no belief or there's no evidence at all to show that people who are atheists have a lesser moral compass than the religious people. And maybe other way around, actually, you see some evidence of things being the other way. People religious tend to be stuck in a rut. We see even in the smallest things, oh, you shouldn't do this because God will not be happy. Or you should eat this because, if you eat this, God is going to burn you to hell. Even the smallest thing, people use God to kind of, in many ways, I would say that it goes, sometimes the idea of God is being used by leading clergy or whatever to control people by this is moral, this is immoral. And sometimes you wonder, it doesn't even make sense at all. But sometimes it can be misused. So in many ways, I would say use your own intuition and guidance. It's inside, you use that as the best moral compass.
That's wonderful to hear, so Vijay Bhai. So you are saying that there are people out there who is using this idea of God, personal God, to control people in their own ways. Is that true? And humanity has been controlled in that way in the past, and now we seem to be coming out of it. Is that true?
Absolutely. I'll give you some examples. I mean, you look at the history of religion. I mean, since the time I read a book by some lady called Catherine Nixie about the darkening age in Christianity, the way Christianity was used to justify killing of pagans, that actually you're doing a good thing by killing him. You're actually, helping him understand. If you torture somebody, you're doing a good thing because he's an immoral person. So in many ways, I mean, even now in many countries, atheism is punishable by death, right? Or even like recently, there's a case recently in Iran that a lady who was from the LGBT community has been put in prison because they believe her life is immoral. Why? Because they believe God told them, not because they think for themselves or science, whatever. God says it. So it's being used a lot. In ancient times, even far worse. I mean, a lot of these clergy have used tremendous power of morality to oppress. I mean, even the very famous story about, is it Hypatia, who was a famous, scientist and astronomer in the ancient Alexandria. And she was killed by fanatic Christians because she was very immoral, because the way she said there's no God, thinking rationally, and God doesn't like that. God likes you to believe in a book. So it's been misused a lot. So the fact that God controls morality in many ways has got a lot of negative, experience of connotations. So in many ways, let's think of the fact that use your own moral compass and think of yourself as divine, other things as divine, and work on that basis. Sita?
Yeah, I think you're it's so right. I mean, especially when you think about this idea of heaven and hell, as opposed to the idea of reincarnation. So you either have to, pay for your little actions and do it in your next life, which seems more sort of logical in a way. But when you think about the idea of heaven and hell, that you do a tiny bit of good work and you get infinite reward, or you do a tiny bit of bad and you're sent to infinite hell, it just doesn't make logical sense. So sometimes this carrot and stick argument is used to keep people in line and keep them sort of under control. And actually, it's something I studied as part of my anthropology degree. This idea that religion is something that's used to control the masses, control the people. It's an idea which has been present in humanity. And it's probably one of the many reasons that a lot of people are now hoping to move away from religion, because they've got the freedom to now. We've got this idea of freedom of speech, freedom of thinking, and people think, really, if this is what religion is all about, I'd rather not have anything to do with it.
That's wonderful to hear, Sitaben. The next question is, as Jaibai was mentioning, humanity is evolving. We've seen the atheism is rising in many countries. Would humanity move towards non-theistic ways to spirituality? People will become more spiritual and not subscribe to religion. And what are the non-theistic ways to spirituality, Sitaben?
Yes, so I mean, we've said this many times, especially, through art and music and science, especially. I think science is incredibly significant because You can use all of these amazing scientific words, which is, something that cuts across all the boundaries of religion, because religion, it does cause division. Unfortunately, this is the way it is. But science has got that sort of universality. So you could be Christian, you could be atheist, you could be Hindu, and you would still open up a physics book and it makes complete sense to you, and you're more likely to accept that than something that's in an ancient text, in an ancient book. If you ask a youngster today, are you more likely to pick up the Vedas and read it, or are you more likely to pick up a book about consciousness and neuroscience? Which one are you going to choose? They're probably more likely going to choose the book about neuroscience because it makes so much more sense to them, something they can relate to. So Hinduism doesn't mind. It doesn't say you have to pick up the Hindu book because you're a Hindu. If you prefer this way, then good for you. And you don't need to have the tops and tails of saying, I am of this religion, I am of that religion. The whole purpose of all of these religions is to encourage us to get to that same destination anyway. So there's no point sort of arguing about which way you use, if it's a theistic way or a non-theistic way. Ultimately, the whole point is to find that deeper dimension to our reality. And it really reminds me of this beautiful story that Swami Vivekananda says. So one day there was a little lion cub who got separated from his mother. And then he saw a group of sheep walking past and he thought, oh, they're my family. So he starts to copy the sheep. The lion cub starts to copy the sheep and starts to eat grass and bleat. And it just thought it was a sheep. And then suddenly a lioness came by and she saw this lion cub in the middle of all the sheep. And she picked it up and took it to the edge of the water and said, look, who do you look like? Do you look like me, a lion, or do you look like the sheep? And then the lion cub realized that it was living, as a sheep all this time. So ultimately, what this whole purpose of all of these spiritual endeavors is to say, shake off the delusion that we are sheep. Make sure that we realize that we are not bodies, we are not matter, we are essentially divinity on earth. And it doesn't matter which way you discover that. Vijay Pai?
Yeah, I think Manish Bhai, you're right, what Jay Bhai mentioned, that humanity is evolving because we learn new things, right? We learn new things, as Sita mentioned. But one thing Sita is right about is that I myself, I'm currently reading the Manusmriti. I'm on page 100. And some of the stuff there makes no sense at all, right? It's like bizarre and crazy stuff. If I give it to my son, I say, read this, he go, why even giving me this? He said, I'll open a modern science book, which makes more sense. Because there's a knowledge in there, though some of the comparisons, some of the metaphors are like really weird because our understanding of science is so much better now. So as society moves on, knowledge increases. So even with books of education history, the books we had about 50 years ago, and now they're different because we've learned new things. Humanity is going all the time. And as you learn more knowledge, we are at point, seriously, we are at point we're going to dump all the old books, religious books. Doesn't matter what, we may revere them, but it's true. I mean, I'll tell you something interesting. I go to Sakre, meetings in Harrow, and I met an imam in the mosque, and he told me that our third generation don't want to come to mosques because they just can't link. They can't say they're learning something rational in school. So the idea that one is going to conquer something else, I think eventually rationality will win and people will start seeing God from the owning rather than following, something blindly. So in many ways, I agree with Jay by that the world is moving to a place where we will dump up all this, irrational stuff, or you must believe in a God, and move to the idea that you have to judge for yourself and decide for yourself what is ultimately true.
That's wonderful to hear. We conclude this topic on atheism and Hinduism and all these discussions. We'll take viewers' questions now. And first question from Altaf Khan is, if someone is atheist Hindu, can he eat non-veg? Vijay Bhai?
Oh, actually, by the way, Hindus do eat non-veg. There's a belief that Hindus do not eat meat. As a matter, I was just mentioning Manusmriti, and they actually have sacrifice of animals in the book is actually mentioned. So the thing is that it is true that Hindus endeavor to actually try not to eat meat because it's too close for comfort. But there's no fixed rule that no Hindus do not eat meat. I'm pretty sure at one time a lot of Hindus did eat meat, but now because see India is very lucky because the climate it has, we are able to grow grain, right? All the vegetables. So very lucky. So we have a very rich diet. So a lot of Hindus prefer vegetarian diet, but Hinduism is not a vegetarian menu. I know a lot of Hindus find that hard to believe. But look, there are Hindus who live in the hills, Garhwal Hills tribes. Hindus live in the desert. The Hindus who live on the fish coastline, and they do eat fish. So it's true that Hindus strive to be vegetarian, but there is no rule like that Hindus don't have to eat meat. So it doesn't matter if you're atheists or not atheists. Many atheists today are vegans because they don't like the idea of climate change, whatever. So I think we should link the two together. We should link the eating of food you eat to religion, or it is atheist or not. So if you're atheist, they can eat. Non-atheists can eat meat. But as I mentioned, as a matter of fact, you'll be surprised. Many religions, not only us, even Abrahamic faiths, if you ask them very that, they say, look, try not to avoid eating meat if you can. Try not to make it your main diet. So there's even I've seen some I think even the Islamic school was saying that meat is something you should try and avoid. I mean, that's why in the Vedas as well, there is animals, but there's a very strict rules on how we can eat meat. So it kind of reduces the amount of meat you eat because it's put strict regulations. So in many ways, the idea is that try and leave a meat diet, try and eat other diets, but there is no evidence at all that there should be zero ban. I mean, Jainism, yes, but in Buddhism or in Hinduism, there is no explicit order that you cannot eat meat. So yeah, so we have to keep those two things separate, right, Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you've answered it. So it doesn't depend on what food you choose to eat, what your spiritual or religious standpoint is. I mean, it depends on you. For you, maybe if it's something you're used to eating meat, there's nothing wrong with it. But you may choose that. You may have grown up in a meat-eating family and actually decide, I don't want to eat meat anymore because I don't believe in cruelty to animals. And then that's up to you to become vegetarian or vegan. So it's your journey and it's your choice, and it doesn't make you any less or more of a Hindu.
We take a next question from Asis. He's asking, what is soul? And there is a next to it. Where does it stay in the body? And if soul is found in the body, what is the use for the common man? 3 questions roll into one. Sitaben?
Yeah, I mean, so basically all of us are essentially a spark of the divine, and we believe in the idea of reincarnation. So your soul sort of has its locus of operation in one particular body, and then when you die it kind of changes to a new locus of operation and you have a new body and you start again. But eventually the whole point of our spiritual journey is to realize that we are not this material body. It's to realize that actually I am the spirit. And it reminds me of what Raman Maharshi said, which is so beautiful and profound. He says, the whole point of asking the question, who am I, which is such a standard question on your spiritual journey, is not to get an answer. It's to dissolve the questioner. Because this little I that I think I am, this little physical body, this me little individual, is not really there. It's an appearance. The whole point is I am that. That's what I see. I am that all-encompassing, beautiful, universal individuality, not this small, tiny little individuality I keep finding myself caught up with. So essentially the soul is that great and grand and beautiful thing, which is part of the whole of the universe. And we don't know why this soul kind of gets very infatuated with matter and thinking that it's this physical body. We don't know why, and Hindus are very honest about it. So the whole point of our spiritual journey is to realize I'm not this little individual I am the universal I. Vijay Bhai?
I think a very interesting question, Manish Bhai. I mean, this question has been asked by even the great acharyas of India. It's not something new. I mean, you're right, as Sita says, Sita is right, that actually we do not, we just believe in the Atman as something universal, yes? It doesn't have to be a physical thing in that sense. So the thing is that I know that the Advaita traditions, they say that they just describe it, you really can't pin it down, but they say that analogy is that they say it's Vibhu. Vibhu means all pervasive, it's in the entire body. It's not a point or something. Whereas if you say to Ramanuja, say that it's an Anu Sukshma, it's like an atom, which is in the body, not a physical atom. It's something on the spiritual realm. But the thing is this, we do not know. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, we have to accept that we are divine beings, and there's more to us in the body, and that is what we're trying to find. If you keep that in your mind, Then whether soul is a dot or something we can harvest, that's irrelevant.
That's wonderful to hear, Vijay Bhai. So we are the divine Atman. And we take a next question from Soham. He's saying, is there a beginning of karma cycle? Why and how did it start? Soham, this question was asked last week, and there is an answer already in the last week's session. So we're going to let this one go at this time. It is available on our YouTube channel, so you can go through last week's Q&A session and view that. Hope you find the answer. And all these questions, most of it have been asked by many of these questions that you are asking are already answered on our YouTube channel. So I would suggest some of the viewers, please do type in your question, and at the end type Hindu Academy and see if a video by Jay Bhai comes up explaining, giving the answer. So it's something, if we can't get around to your question, that is a way you can get the answer to your question as well. We take a next question from Egon Devotee. He's saying, is it permitted to disagree with the existence of Brahman, but consider the devas to be separate gods in true polytheistic way? What is your view on this, Vijay Bhai? Is it permitted to disagree with the existence of Brahman, but then consider the devas to be separate gods in true polytheistic way? What's your point of view, Vijay Bhai?
Okay, so I mean, you can believe that, I think, but in general, the Hindu belief is that there's actually one ultimate principle, and all the gods are but manifestations. Manifestation in the sense that how we see Brahman. Not necessarily that is actually a separate entity. If it helps you to progress spiritually in polytheist, then so be it. That's your right, and we respect. Hindus say, go for that path. But the idea is that when you have we have hundreds, thousands of gods. Any god you choose is a form for what do you call a final representation of Brahman, which you choose to believe in because that helps your spiritual path. If you say there's no Brahman, then that's your stage of spiritual progress. That's fine too. But I think most Christians accept that the Brahman is the ultimate principle, and everything else is but a final representation of Brahman. Sita?
Yeah, so I completely agree. There has to, by definition, ultimate means only one. You can't then have more than one ultimate, because that's just doesn't, it's not rational to say that. So ultimately what we say is that all of these different deities and gods and goddesses are different manifestations of the same one spirit. And, we were talking earlier about the soul. So when you sort of come face to face with, with the ultimate reality, that small little individuality has to sort of drop off as well, because that's the ultimate. You are merging with the ultimate. There is only one ultimate, and it cannot be otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Sita Ben, Vijay Bhai. We take the next question. Asis is asking, if we give free books, like Valmiki Ramayana or Bhagavad Gita, will that help? My view on this is there are many people who have lots of books, especially on with WhatsApp. There are many people sharing many books, even Vedas, etc., on WhatsApp. But do anyone actually read this? And that is the one big question. Very few people read it. So how much it will help? I think I'll leave it to you. Vijay Bhai, any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, you can give books, I think, but make sure people read them. If you don't read them, don't give them. But I mean, as you know, Sita has mentioned so many times, there's so many ways to make spiritual progress. Reading a book is not the only way. And I would say that modern youth don't tend to read books to make spiritual progress. They're trying to see God in humanity. In many ways, I feel good about it because Jay's dream is being realized in that sense. So I think the question is that read books for your knowledge. I mean, I read books. But I don't believe that all the books I've read actually has made me spiritual. Spiritual means seeing God in others. Serving God in others is a much more better effect spiritual progress. That's my kind of experience. So, Sita, anything to add on that?
No, that's it. I mean, you can't force anyone to read it if they don't want to, because in a way it'll just put them off even further. So you have to let them sort of go on their natural path, really.
Okay, we have a question from Renegade King. He's saying, I wish to become a monk. Is Ramakrishna Mission a good organization to join? Sitaben?
Yes, one of my dad's best friends actually joined the Ramakrishna Mission many years ago, and you know it's wonderful because it's got this very sort of philanthropic angle to it, and once you become a monk there and you kind of settle into life there, it's a beautiful place to progress on your spiritual journey. So yes, you're welcome to look into it for sure. Vijay bhai?
Okay. The little knowledge that I have of Ramakrishna Mission is that, as Sita mentioned, the main goal is to serve God in others, humanity, basically service to humanity. But the good thing about Ramakrishna Mission, they have a lot of leeway. They accept that you're from different backgrounds. There are not way too many rules. Like in some of the monk orders I've seen, like Swaminarayan monk order, there's so many rules you got to follow, and there's so many. In essence, Ramakrishna Mission is a bit more, gives you more leeway. It accepts that you're from different background. So the rules you follow are some of the very key basic rules you got to follow. So in many ways, you have a lot more leeway to, I guess, follow your spiritual path. So yeah, it's a good order to join. And one thing to mention, the work that Ramakrishna Mission has done is far more than any other religious organization in India. I mean, you see all this, you unfortunately only hear about Mother Teresa doing this, Christian Church doing this, all this. But the work of Ramakrishna Mission is very immense. I would say it's it is the biggest in my view in India, holding a lot of philanthropic work. So yes, if you want to do that and you serve God in humanity, then go for it.
Okay, we take a next question from Industrial Air Cooler. He's saying how to manage spiritual life along with personal life, family life, and professional life. How Jay Lakhani sir used to manage time and be so successful. Sitaben?
Yeah, I mean, basically the example which is given in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, is we should live like a lotus flower. So the lotus flower grows pure and beautiful, even though it's in muddy water, and it doesn't get muddied or dirtied by it. It's still pure and beautiful. And so that's the guidance that we're given, is that we should live in this muddy materialistic world, but still have our hearts and minds dedicated to something higher. And my dad lived his life totally like that. He was busy doing so many activities. He never sort of sat still. He was always doing something, going to schools or helping me with business or whatever. He was always doing something. And he always had this sort of spiritual insight, which really helped him to sort of get through everything that he was doing in his life. So we have to keep our hands to work and our mind to God, essentially, and that's the way that we can live our lives without losing our focus. Vijay bhai?
Not much to add, Sita. I think very nicely covered. And all I can add is that there are many ways of living. One, of course, people say that, oh, you should totally go away and live in a forest or something. Some say, oh, you should not interact at all with humanity, very minimal interaction. But the way I see I'll go with Swami Vivekananda's teachings, that live among humanity, see the God in everybody and serve them. I think that's in a way kind of summarizes Jay Bhai's life. And Sita is right. I mean, I know how busy he was. Yeah, I goodness when he slept actually, but yeah, serving humanity. That's the goal in life. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear about, Jay Bhai. We take a last question from Mad Lab. He's asking if the major goal of life is to merge individual soul into the universal soul, then why is in the first place individual soul detach itself from the Brahman? Vijay Bhai?
So first of all, it is not detached from Brahman, it is Brahman. It just stuck in a materialist journey. But as we say, that's a very fundamental question. Why are we stuck? All we know is we are stuck and we have to get out of it and find that actually we are part of Brahman. I mean, there's many metaphors, rivers. Why does a river find out? Of course, some point, like how a river starts. Water evaporates somehow. It goes, it rains somewhere, it becomes a river, right? It starts flowing. Ultimately, the whole cycle is the same thing. It is the river needs to find that it is water, the one collective Brahman. Same for us, we interact, we get stuck in a material journey. We go to find out ultimately who we truly are. When we find out, we forget about this material journey. It disappears basically. As to why we are continuously coming in and going out, that's something, as we say, we do not know. All we do know is we are stuck now and we have to get out of it and find our true nature. Asita?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, we don't know why. We don't know why we get caught up in this material journey, but we have to remember that we are essentially spiritual beings and we have to try and find a way out. And we don't know why, and we are very honest about it.
That's wonderful. That is it. That was the last question for the day. We've come to the end of the hour and end of the session. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry if we haven't been able to take your question today. Please do join us next week, and we'll try to take your questions then. And we'll bring a new topic, and hopefully you can join us. We need a quote from Swami Vivekananda. Sitaben, do you have one, please?
Oh, God, I have to think. The only one I can think of at the top of my head is "They alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive."
That's wonderful. That's my favorite as well. So there you go. That's the quote for the day. And hope you have a nice week, and hope to join you next year, meet you and online, and have your questions answered next week. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and see you next week. Bye now.